The question is, are cool cars dying? Are interesting cars, unique ones, childhood cars of some of you guys, and definitely of me, are they dying? Are they all being cancelled, discontinued, flushed down the damn drain? That's what I'm here to talk about today, because it seems like more and more cars just disappear. Now, I never used to really be on top of any of this kind of information until I started the Stick Drift podcast about a year ago, just over a year ago. A podcast about racing games, yes, and motorsports, yes, but for the most part, a podcast about cars, about the latest news in cars, the latest changes, the biggest upcoming cars. And because of that, I've been way more in tune with brand new cars. But I've also been in tune with cars that are getting cancelled. And some have absolutely surprised me in the last year that I've been running this podcast. And yesterday was my breaking point, because a childhood dream car of mine got cancelled. Now, I couldn't really care about this car nowadays. I wouldn't get it as a dream car. But thinking back to this thing being my dream car all those years back as a wee lad, and then seeing that car is being cancelled, it's just sad. So I tweeted a full list of cars that have been cancelled since we started the podcast. And here's the technicalities. So technically, some of them aren't cancelled, they've been replaced. The Lamborghini Aventador has been replaced with the Lamborghini Revuelto. This thing is the brand new, well, it's a hybrid. It's not really, I mean, it has all the V12s and the whatnot, but it's a hybrid. In fact, the Urus is getting a replacement soon in the same vein. Same with the Huracan. In fact, the Huracan's been spotted during testing phases. It kind of just looks like another Revuelto. It's got the lifted exhaust at the back as well, but instead it's a bit more stubby from the front, really. That thing as well. And again, I wouldn't have actually known about these upcoming cars if it wasn't for the Stick Drift podcast out every single week. Yes, do go subscribe to that, but that's besides the point. The Aventador getting cancelled in the last year got this thing as its replacement, the Lamborghini Revuelto, and honestly, I've kind of grown to like the Revuelto. A Urus replacement I won't really care about. A Huracan replacement looks like I probably won't care about it, but the Aventador replacement, at least, I think turned out pretty well. Honestly, all things considered, pretty well. Another car that's been cancelled, but is getting a replacement, is the Dodge Charger. Not only this, but the Dodge Challenger. In fact, I think this one's the Challenger and the other one's the Charger, actually. I might be an idiot there. I think I am, actually. But that's besides the point. The Dodge Challenger, as well as the Dodge Charger, are both being replaced. Meaning that these ones have been cancelled. So that's kind of alright, right? Like, it doesn't entirely matter that this thing's being cancelled, when it's got a replacement right round the corner. But, I mean, it depends. I mean, see, whether you're happy about that replacement kind of really depends on what you think of EV cars. Especially EV muscle cars, if there's even such a thing. Because the Charger and the Challenger are being replaced by the Charger Daytona SRT. This thing, an EV car with a silly engine sound. This is that engine sound. Essentially, they just made an MP3 file, which is supposed to be the replacement to... Yeah, it's looking rough. And finally, a softer mention, because the 765LT is basically the same thing, just with a few customized parts. It's the 720S. Yeah, there's no more 720S, but yeah, we did get the 765LT, so, I mean, does it really matter? Not really, right? So that's why I don't really care about mentioning this thing in this video. But it is technically a cancelled car in the last... since we started the Stick Drift podcast, so about a year. hitting some nice drifts at least. Let's get to some of the cars that actually kind of matter, which starts with the Acura NSX. This one just didn't sell for Acura very well, so they made a final version. I think it had some 600 horsepower or so, if I'm reading that right. It was pretty cool. It has like that long front that thing has, and they're sodding it off. They're chucking out the Acura NSX. There will no longer be an Acura NSX. That name is dead, at least for now, unless they pull an eclipse and bring that name back for an SUV. For now, the Acura NSX is no more. This car was one of my first ever favorite cars in the Crew 2. When I played that game, I really enjoyed the Acura NSX. It was the first car I used religiously. I would go into every race with the Acura NSX. I don't know much about this brand, so I've not got much to say about them, but the Infiniti Q60, people like this thing, right? I've heard people like Infiniti. Well, the Q60, this being the black project, this is like a specific variation. This is like it's like a racing version or something. I don't know. But the base Q60 cancelled. Gone. Next, a car that I didn't actually know had such a nice engine sound in this game. It's unique. This thing, the Jaguar F-Type, was one of the first ones that happened. We started the podcast last year, I want to say August-ish, and then the Jaguar F-Type got cancelled. Like, the second episode, it got cancelled. Now, this car got very weird near the end. It just didn't look too good towards so they changed something about the lights, they changed something about the grille, and it just didn't look great towards its last few days, and then it was cancelled. In fact, Jaguar are doing a full overhaul. They're cancelling most of their road cars, their SUVs, their sedans, because they're switching. Now, I didn't believe this when we first read this on the podcast either, to a Rolls-Royce Bentley competitor type brand. What? Yes, Jaguar, the company that did used to have insane stature. The E-Type was an insanely high-profile car, then ruined their reputation with base model, generic AI traffic sedans and SUVs with only one cool car being the F-Type, then make no cool cars, cancelling the F-Type, now want to become a Bentley Rolls-Royce competitor. What are they doing? What are you doing, Jaguar? What are you doing? The thing is, for me, as a Brit, it gets even worse. It goes from not making much sense to just being downright annoying against goddamn culture and just infuriating, frankly. In fact, the base model isn't even in this game, but in Rallycross, you might know of a little name from Ford called the Ford Fiesta. This thing, again, isn't in the game in a base model for some reason, but the Rallycross one is, and even though this thing had been discontinued from America, most of NA for ages, years, I think like upwards of like half a decade at this point, it was still a staple of Europe. In fact, the 2 months, in fact, a fair few of the months since this thing's cancellation, it's remained the most sold car that month, and then sometimes gets beat out by SUVs. But the Ford Fiesta, as much as North America never cared about this car, it truly is a staple of British culture, this thing. Honestly, as a kid, I completely forgot that Ford was an American brand because the Transit van and the Fiesta and the Focus, they were just such British cars to me. And now look, you might not care about the Ford Fiesta specifically being cancelled, but I'd hope out of principle you care about the cancellation and the reason. Because the most sold car in multiple months and years of the UK and Europe, they cancelled because they converted the final factory into an EV factory. Not just any EVs, because if they were making cool EVs, if they made it a Ford GT Tron, you know, I think that'd be pretty cool and I'd allow it. They cancelled it to make SUV and people carrier and like minivan EVs. The most sold car, like every other month in the UK, was cancelled for some EV minivans. Now, like I mentioned, this thing cancelled in North America so long ago, so maybe you just kind of don't care. Maybe you're like, shit, I mean, Ford, they're great, but yeah, no, I couldn't care less about a car that I've not seen on the road for probably a decade. Well, after I do a double, 1.5 barrel rolls down this mountain, I'll tell you that the news gets even worse if you're a Ford fan. Because they didn't just cancel the Fiesta, they also cancelled the Ford GT. This thing also cancelled. So again, another company that has many generic cars, but that's what Ford's known for, really. Has one cool car, though. Yeah, no, they don't. Not anymore. This thing also gone. What other cars? I mean, I guess they got the Mustang. They've got the... You know what? To be fair, out of Dodge, Chevrolet, and Ford, those three muscle car companies, the Mustang has survived. You know what? Good on them, but they did cancel the GT, so can't get that anymore. Now, the Ford GT, I don't know. I never really cared for this thing much. I thought it was cool. I think this thing is a very cool car. Didn't think much of it, though, past that, really. It was something just to do with the fact, you know, it's a low volume, high price car. It's a big expensive, and they just didn't want to do it. I guess they just didn't want to do it. But again, just like most companies, it's like, damn, you're really choosing just the money makers over anything cool, over anything that has a stature to it. But it gets worse for brands that only have a handful of cool cars. Now, Audi is doing the e-tron now. They've got that Audi electric SUV, which I think is also called the e-tron. They're doing a wagon version of the e-tron, which I think is also called the e-tron. And then, well, what else do they have? Oh, nothing, actually? Well, considering they've cancelled the Audi TT, the thing that in real life, you know, if you wanted a simple but noticeable car, and that wasn't a Porsche, which depreciates the moment you touch the gas pedal, the Audi TT was a pretty good bet. This thing looked nice, would at least catch your eye a little bit. It's like a mini R8, but unfortunately, it has a bit too much in common with the R8 because it's been cancelled. This thing pretty iconic for me because it was the starter car I picked in the crew too. And like I said, I didn't misspeak, it's been cancelled along with the Audi R8. It got one final model, which was a souped-up road version. It was a track version made for the road, and that's it. There's gonna be no more Audi R8s. In fact, they're ditching it for the e-tron. That's their big sporty car now. This news came only just after, or maybe even the week after or of, the Jaguar F-Type cancellation. So, not only do we lose the F-Type, we lost the Audi R8. No companies want to make cool cars anymore. It's honestly why I consider Alpine, I'm going to leave more of that clip in, that was a clean one drift to the other. It's why Alpine, in my opinion, is my favorite car brand. Alpine are new in general, relatively speaking, compared to how long everyone else has been going. Plus, yeah, it's a technicality that they're new because they were old, but then Renault just brought them back. But Alpine are actually doing cool things right now with the A110, with the A290, and a new one that they're making very soon. A bunch of new ones that they're making very soon. Obviously, they're gonna have to sell out at some point, but because they're new, they're actually doing cool stuff at the moment. And Alfa Romeo said that they're never gonna ditch the Giulia because they don't want to make generic SUVs, even though they do make generic SUVs. But, you know, also they make the Giulia. In the meantime, we're seeing everything go EV, or just seeing everything go. It's either everything goes EV, or it's just gone. Even though I believe it was BMW went to the EU, who are making this law where after 2035, you can't make a non-EV car anymore. And I believe they got them to change it. So now it's just cars that run on synthetic fuel are allowed. So it didn't even matter. And let's not even talk about how much lithium farming does to lithium mining does to the environment. You know, if we're talking about the environment, I don't know how much lithium mines do for the environment, but who cares, I guess. But the most recent cancellation happened yesterday. The cancellation that I mentioned at the start of this video was a car that was one of my first ever childhood dream cars. I saw the Bugatti Veyron, and I was like, damn, that's the fastest car in the world. That's my dream car. But then I saw a movie. I saw a movie called Transformers. And since that movie, or at least right after that movie, because definitely not currently, my dream car at the time, because of Bumblebee, was the Chevrolet Camaro. And this thing, as of yesterday, has been cancelled. I remember not even knowing what this car was. I wasn't into cars at that time, so I didn't even know the name of this thing or what it was until my mum looked it up for me. It was a Chevrolet Camaro, and I wanted one. Way back when. I don't really care for one now. Obviously, there's other Camaros in the game. There's the ZL1 as well as edition versions of the Camaro, the Rift Edition and the Bend Edition. But this Camaro was the one I loved way back when. Aww. But it's gone. They cancelled it yesterday. They will no longer be making Camaros. Meaning, out of the Camaro, the Mustang, the Challenger, and the Charger, in my opinion, the main muscle car names, the Mustang's the only one left, as every single other one is flushed down the drain. Now, will they be making a replacement for the Camaro? I don't know. But I will know when it comes in the news and we report on it in the Stick Drift podcast out every single week. Head over, check out the Stick Drift podcast. Yeah, that's every single car. Oh, well, not every single car. That's all the ones on my tweet that were most of the cool cars that have been cancelled in the last year. This video was a different one. I talked about real world cars. Whoa! It's like video games, but in real life. And, you know, that's something new. But there's a lot more of that on the podcast from someone who knows a lot more. My mate, Josh, he knows way more about cars than I do. You know, the podcast, that's where we talk about that stuff, including F1, including racing games. In fact, we broke down all of the information out on the leaked playlist, the playlist that has been added into the game before it's actually in the game. This one right here. That's all been broken down on the Stick Drift podcast. That really is the drift balloon. And it does have the drift banners. And it okay. I've just thought of something, but I'll come back to it. Thank you to popular members, especially thanks to famous members, and an insane thank you to star members, Danimal, the Man, and One Grim Pepper, and an insane top thank you to Icon members, HK. I will see you boys in the next one, or I'll see you on the podcast, or well, watching the podcast. That's about it from me, in a